Hello, hello. It is November 23rd, 2024. It is a nice, breezy Saturday, and we have yet another chess session. So, the usual suspects today. There's a guy named Liam who he shows up pretty often, but he just likes playing casual. He's not interested in the little league that we do, which is totally fine. I mean, you know, just come here, play chess, like whatever. So I don't remember what order I played those games in, but I think I played like one or two against Emmanuel, and then I played Liam, and we kind of just like, we kind of just bantered a little bit, and it is what it is. Just had some fun, casual chess. So that was that, and then as I took a small break, I landed at the tail end of a game between Anthony and Wayne, which ended in a perpetual check, but Anthony, who was playing black, was like almost about to get checkmated, or like Wayne had like a pawn that was about to get promoted. He was on c7, and yeah, there's a perpetual check, and Wayne just offered a draw because well, it wasn't technically a perpetual, but I think it would have been mate if they didn't repeat. Maybe I don't really know. So yeah, I played against Emmanuel two times, and then I played Wayne, and I'm only talking about league games here. Emmanuel twice, Wayne once, Anthony once, and then Emmanuel again once more. One of the games against Emmanuel was when I was playing white. I didn't record that game by accident. I thought I hit the record button. I did not. And, such is life, I guess. It happens. That game I did win, though. It was a very interesting position where he kind of got like some kind of like weird King's Indian style setup where the whole center is locked and he's trying to attack me on the king side. But his attack just wasn't there, or it didn't come fast enough compared to my counterplay on the queen side, and eventually he just blundered his rook because he was trying to attack my queen, but it didn't actually work. So yeah, let's get into the games that I did record though. So I have this already set up for once. I am playing black pieces against Emmanuel, so d4, knight f6, knight c3, g6, and we're getting into like a weird Peertz setup. I've been playing the King's Indian as black exclusively against d4 lately, just because the problem with me playing against d4 is that I just like can never settle on one opening that I want to play for some reason. I know I like these attacking structures with like a locked center with like f4, e5, d6 pawns for black, and something like e4, d5, maybe not c6, but like I like those lock structures attacking chess. So I've been playing the King's Indian, and this game is not a great showcase of my skills based on the evaluation, but anyway, we get to this position. I know Emmanuel likes playing these like h3 and a3 moves just because like it prevents a lot of moves such as bishop b4. Obviously my bishop's not there, but just pretend, right? He likes playing h3 to prevent anything revolving around bishop g4, for example, or knight g4 if there is a case for it, which it's not a bad move, but it's not totally necessary, right? Like you don't have to play those moves. And sometimes this pin is just neutralized by playing something like bishop e2, right? So like, you could play something like bishop d2 to prevent a pin here. But yeah, he likes playing these moves in the middle. So I castled bishop c4. I played h6 just in case he was trying to go for some like fried liver nonsense. But he castles knight d7. Knight bd7 apparently is a mistake because of e5, which, after take, now I can't really deal with this pawn. I might have to go here, but then some stuff might happen. So I'll just put it on the board here. Boom, boom. Knight g4, and now, yeah, right, e6 is like positionally I'm just worse because, if I take it this way, then I have a weakness on this diagonal, and my g6 pawn would be weak. So for example, like this, Don't mind the fact I'm blundering a knight, but you know, that's the idea. And if I don't take, he's going to take me, and it's like, again, my g6 pawn is weak. Again, don't pretend that's not there, but that's the idea. So instead of e5, which he missed, he plays rook e1. I mean, pretty logical and normal move. I play a6, again missing e5, and here he plays h3. So like I was saying, he likes putting these pawns here. They could be hooks later in the game, but in this game I didn't actually have a setup with like bishop d7, queen c8, or some kind of battery to sack against the pawn here. So I played e5. He plays bishop d2, kind of keeping the tension. I play b5, and he plays bishop a2, bishop b7, b4, knight b6. So my idea was to kind of just like shove a knight into here, and if he wants to trade off his bishop, that's fine, because there's still this tension here. So after something like here, take, I'm going to take this way. I mean, he might be able to lock it anyway, but you know, if he locks it, then I'll just play play for f5. And I mean, I didn't think too ahead in this game, all things considered. I was just like, all right, put knight on good square and I should be okay. So he plays queen c8. I totally missed that my pawn was hanging. I should have played like h5 if I wanted to save the pawn, but then that allows knight f5 or knight g5, and I guess I could play knight h7 to try to trade it off, but I don't know, it's just bad. So here I do end up playing knight c4, but this plan that I had in my head was not actually good. So I played b takes c4. He took my pawn. I took back in the center in between, but then he takes with the knight. So I know this capture is going to happen no matter what, and I would never take this way because my whole king side or my king in particular, just gets paralyzed. No reason I'll allow it, so I just let him take me. So I played rook e8. He takes, take back. f3, kind of just blocking out my bishop. So now I'm trying to figure out, all right, how can I actually use my bishop in this position? My pawns, like how do I protect this pawn if at all? Obviously I can't even go to b5, so it's like, oh god, what do I do? I started with knight d7. I wanted to reroute my knight to maybe like e5 so I can maybe go to d3. But after knight d5, I'm like, I could take here, but I don't want to put his pawn there. So I just kicked it out with c6. Not the way to go. I should have played either c5 right away, or actually I should have taken here. Okay, so I should have taken here and probably played rook e1, queen e1, queen g5, and then it would attack this pawn and put some pressure here. But I played c6. He retreats to e3, and I played d5. So now like my structure is kind of okay, right? After takes, which happened in the game, I was like, okay, well, my structure is now protected. My bishop, even though it's staring at this pawn, it's defending a very important pawn, which is like kind of like the only pawn formation I have in this game, really, besides like the king side. And well, yeah. Nevertheless, I did want to reroute this knight. If I can like put a rook on d8, I was going to reroute my knight. And I was like, okay, I'm still down a pawn that I lost in h6, but I thought this position shouldn't be that bad. Now, obviously, the computer is saying this is +3, and positionally, I'm worse. But one of the benefits about being bad at positional chess is that you think you're still fine in this position, even though the computer is screaming that you're not. So, yeah, I mean, I'm totally worse in this position, but yeah, I don't know why. And I could figure out why, but I haven't looked at it deeply enough because I'm trying to show you what happened. So he played c3 here. And when he played c3, I was pretty happy because I wanted to put my knight on d3, like I've been saying for the last minute. The only problem with putting my knight on d3 was that the pawn on c2 prevents that from happening. So when he pushed c3, I'm like, oh, I can actually just plop my knight in here, and it just controls all these squares, which is really annoying. And it provides some backup to these squares. Right, so it's like super, super nicely outposted knight. That said, he can totally work to get rid of it by playing something like knight g4, knight f2. But nevertheless, I'm going to start working towards getting my knight to d3. And there it is. So I put my bishop back on c8. I wanted to like maybe go like bishop f5, but then g4. So maybe I would go here, but it takes, and I mean even taking is not that bad because it's like all together. But yeah, he played rook e2. I played queen g5. So I'm still defending this pawn. I'm attacking the knight, right? Because I have 2 attackers on it now. Number 4, and I'm also like subtly threatening bishop takes h3 because this pawn is pinned to the king. So he plays queen d2, and I was like, okay, well, that looks fine, right? Yeah, there's a discovery here, but I figured it'd be okay. But I was like, okay, that's fine. The pawn's protecting the square. Like, it should be fine. So I went with bishop takes h3 because it's pinned, haha. But this doesn't actually work because knight e5 still actually works here. And the reason it works is because the queens see each other and they're hanging. I'm in check. And the only real way to kind of deal with this is to play, king f6. Then, oops, take, rook e8, rook e8, knight d6. Knight d6. And I'm still positionally worse. Okay, I saw a different line where if I somehow take here, then obviously this hangs. And against this, I mean, obviously I take there. So yeah, anyway, we both missed missed knight f5, knight e f5. And he played knight g4, and I was like, okay. So it looks like my bishop is getting trapped, right? Because this knight is blocking the vision on the g2 pawn to pin the pawn to the king. But I'm like, I don't see any more tactics around the king, so let me just trade the queens off. So take the queen, he takes back, I take the knight, he takes back. So now we get this position where it's 2 rooks versus 2 rooks, knight versus knight. My knight is nicely outposted, and it's 5 pawns versus 5 pawns. His pawns are doubled, which is not actually that much of an advantage. It's actually like fine. It still like is 2 pawns, so I wasn't thinking that I was better or anything. But I figured, okay, it should be about even. My knight is probably a little better than his knight, right? Because I still have pawns that cover 3 of the 4 advancing squares for the knight. Whereas mine is just like, it's all over the place. I mean, his rooks are controlling the squares, but, you know, I figured, at least after the game, when I was thinking about it, I'm like, you know, the rooks being side by side like this don't actually contribute to like coming down here and putting pressure. So maybe instead he could do this way and then look to play like somehow get to this square or this square to trade this knight off. Right, that really is what I felt like his plan should have been. How exactly you do that, I don't really know. I'm sure there's a way to do it. Oh yeah, just knight f3, knight e1. Let's trade this knight off. Or I'll probably move it, but, you know, or at least it's not outposted. So, yeah, so I take his knight on g4. He takes back. I play knight f4 to kind of hit the rook on e2. He doesn't trade and give me the open file, so he plays rook f2. I go back, and then he goes to he goes to f3. And, you know, I saw this rook check, and he would have gone here, but I didn't really see a follow-up. I guess I have rook h8, but even then he goes to g3, and I, again, didn't really see the point of putting his king on g3. So I decided against it. Well, actually, no, I did play it here. Right. So I don't even remember what happened, apparently. This was 6 hours ago, maybe like 7. Yeah, more like 7 hours ago. So, yeah, so I did give him the check, and then he plays rook f1. Now, I could take, and, you know, he takes back, and then I play rook e8, and I didn't really see too much there. So I was like, all right, whatever. I'll just play rook e8 now, because if he takes me and then takes, and then king h2, now my rook is like on the back rank. I can bother all of his pawns, and he kind of has a hard time defending his pawns, actually. Like, you can't really bring his rook behind, or I guess technically in front. My rook is behind his line of defense, so to speak. So if he goes here, I take. So I'm like, all right, rook e8, it should be fine. And then here he plays a4. And you can see, like, this is completely lost for white now. I took his rook on f1 because my idea was that I was going to infiltrate with my other rook to e1. And now I'm going to pressure all of his pawns, like I've been talking about, right? He's going to have to play a5, and then I can pressure this pawn. And it's like, how does he defend it? Maybe here, but yeah. So he took back with the king. I played rook e1, and he paused for a while. I was like, what? I'm like, oh, this is just mate. I totally did not see the fact that if he took with the king, it would be mate. Right, because this is cut off, and yeah. So in my head, I was like, okay, let me think. So if I go here first, he can't. Well, actually, no, he could go there. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll go here first, pressure this, force him to play blah blah blah. Like, I'm thinking way ahead into a future endgame that isn't actually going to happen because this is just mate. I'm like, oh, this is mate. Oh shit, good job, me. Good job. So yeah, I mean, I was definitely worse than most of the early to middle game here, and I didn't even know why. Something I need to look out for more is e5 pushes, because, I mean, I can't obviously take here because I'm losing, so like this position is just very uncomfortable. So yeah, I didn't expect him to play e5, and I mean, neither did he, so good for me. Lucky for me, I should say. Get this out of the way. Yeah, and I guess this knight c4 idea just didn't work. One, I'm losing a pawn. And two, like, this pawn is actually, it probably shouldn't actually survive, but somehow we managed to transform it. And then, you know, there was another tactical blunder here, but neither of us saw it, so all good, right? All good. Okay, so game number 2, I'm playing against Wayne. I was kind of sad to hear that he had to leave after this last game because it was still relatively early in the afternoon, early in the session, based on like the normal allotted time that we have. I've totally stayed much later than the allotted time playing chess still, but I don't think they care all too much. But anyway, so we get a Sicilian. I play a closed Sicilian with knight c3, and I'm happy to see him play a Sicilian because my selective memory remembers that when he would play the modern, right, he likes playing it like this. You know, I just have a very easy plan of just going h4, h5, bishop h6, trade this off, and just attack him. In one of the previous, most recent games against him, I had like a +2 or +3 advantage in the middle game. I couldn't convert it because I ran out of time. But the system for white is just like so easy to play, and it's like, you know, you're just immediately getting assaulted. So I really like it a lot. This is called the 150 attack. You might see it in the, maybe not in the King's Indian, but against like the Pierts and the modern, this is a very good way to play. A very simple way to play, I should say. And even in previous times, like, I've gotten very good positions against him. I've like won games very quickly because, you know, there are some mistakes, but so yeah, ignoring all the modern defense stuff. He plays Sicilian again. He played it against me last time, and in that game I did lose. Why did I lose? I don't remember why I lost. Probably because I lost a bunch of pieces, but you know. Yeah, anyway, close Sicilian. He plays a this is like kind of like a hyper accelerated dragon. I mean, the main difference is that I'm not playing knight f3, so he develops his pieces. I mean, pretty normal stuff. This a6 b5 idea, I mean, obviously he wants to close this diagonal against my bishop, but I have a pawn on d3 already, so he can't actually push c4 all that easily. Or at least not right now. He continues with e6. I played knight e2. I don't know why I played knight e2. Because usually I would play f4, knight f3. But for some reason, my hand just played knight e2, and I hit the clock, and I was like, why did I play it like this? I don't know. It was a weird thing. But he plays bishop b7. I castle. He plays knight e7. I notice he likes developing his king side like this in a lot of his openings. So like in the modern, he likes playing like this. And, you know, in this game, in the Sicilian, he likes developing his pieces like this. And I wonder if there's actually a way to punish these kinds of setups. In this particular position, it's not really anything, but you know, it's funny because like when you play against the same people over and over again, you kind of notice that a lot of their tendencies, especially in the same opening, but even across different openings, you'll notice that like, you know, some people like playing this way. Like Emmanuel likes playing a3 and h3 to prevent these like prevent these bishop g4 ideas or bishop b4 ideas. You know, Wayne here likes setting up with a fianchettoed kingside bishop with a knight on e7. Anthony likes his light squared bishop fianchettoed in like the French or the Queen's Indian. To see those trends in these people, and I kind of wonder if there's somehow, some way, can I actually like exploit that? I don't think so. I think those small things are just like, it's not like they're huge blunders, right? They're just like small little sprinkles of stuff. Anyway, tangent aside, bishop e3, just trying to attack the c5 pawn, queen c7. Now we play f4, kind of looking like a Grand Prix in a weird way, but my knight should be on f3 and not e2. He breaks with e5, and here I was looking at this, and I'm like, I kind of want to play f5, but I don't think it really works out too well because he's just going to take here like this. But the computer says it's the best way to play, actually. Like, the computer wants this, but it's still minus 0.5. Now, practically speaking, I don't hate this for white. So, continuation would be something like that. I guess you don't have to take the bishop, but yeah, I didn't see this line. I kind of stopped like here. But yeah, I guess this exchange is actually decent for white, which is really crazy to me. All right, so I just took back on d5 because I knew this couldn't be too bad of a move. And then I played d4 after the captures because I didn't want him to play d4 himself to fork my pieces. So I was like, I'll play d4. So game continues with knight f5, queen d2, right? He's trying to take my bishop, and I don't want to give it away for free. And it's also a fork, so yeah, let's not do that. He shuts my bishop out with c4, which is, you know, I kind of saw this coming from a mile away, you know, because he played a6 b5. And I figured, all right, well, my bishop's going to get trapped. I'll let him take the time to move all these pawns, but I'll have, you know, hopefully better development slightly. And I can always just bring my bishop back to b1 after I get my rook into the game, play c3. You know, and okay, I was like, okay, so my bishop will eventually have some purpose, just maybe not for a little bit. Okay, one jump cut later, he's played c4, so he's blocking my bishop in. You know, I figured, okay, I'm going to go like... So this is what I had in my head. This is my plan at this point in the game. All right, I need to get my bishop into the game, because otherwise I may as well just be -3. So I was thinking knight g3, knight ce2, rook e1, c3, bishop b1, and now my bishop actually does something. Like a little bit of something. You know, his king is still in the center of the board as well, so maybe if I can like get my bishop out of the way, play rook e1 check, maybe it'd be cool. So that's kind of what I start going for. Knight g3, knight d6, not wanting to trade, I guess. So I played f5 here because I was like, this is probably a good time to play it because I want to kind of like just be a nuisance and like chip away at some of the structure here maybe. His king is still in the center. I mean, obviously he can just castle. But if he castles here, I'm going to take, and I don't know, maybe he gets a little uncomfortable. He plays knight d7, so I was like, okay, maybe you're going to castle that way. And so I was like, okay, sure. But I go with bishop h6, so obviously I'm threatening the bishop. And if he castles, I can take, and, you know, we've seen it before, h4, h5. My pawn's already on f5, so maybe I have an attack that can come somewhat quickly. But at the same time, I got to reroute all my pieces over here, so, like, maybe not. But he plays bishop f6. I was like, that's a weird move. I guess, like, okay, you don't want to trade bishops, and you also don't want to castle kingside and trade the bishop. So I guess that was his idea. But then I played rook e1 check, and, you know, now it's like you have to kind of play king d8. And I was like, okay, this is actually kind of good for me because your king isn't totally safe. You know, like maybe in like 2 or 3 moves it'll be safe, but right now, like, your rooks are disconnected. You need to spend 2 moves to connect them and then contest the file. But by that time, I'll have, if I really wanted to, rook e3, rook fe1. Excuse me. You know, so I was like, all right, that looks really suspicious here. I started with bishop g5 to trade off the bishop. Really, this is me just satisfying like the lizard part of my brain that's like, haha, me pin piece to king. So he takes, I take back with check. He plays f6, which was a pretty good move. Not something I considered. You know, I thought he was just going to go like c8. But, you know, this kind of puts tempo on my queen. So I'm like, all right. Queen e3. He plays rook e8, trying to attack my queen, of course. I step out of the way with queen f3. Here he plays g5. I'm like, I guess that's one way to relieve the tension here. I don't really have much of a future with this pawn anymore. Like, I'm not really ever going to be able to push this. So I'm like, all right, fine. But what I noticed about this move was that it opens up this small diagonal here, which my queen can very easily access. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to keep that in the back of my mind. But let me continue with what I wanted to do. Well, first I took on e8 and then played rook e1 again. So that now I'm like really controlling this file. Apparently that wasn't the way to go, but all right, sure. It kind of made sense to me. Queen b6. So again, continuing with what I wanted to do, which was reroute my knights and get my bishop into the game, sort of. You know, with the pawn here getting kind of blockaded, maybe it doesn't really have a future, but it's better than staring at this pawn, right? I guess, maybe, I don't know. So knight e2, and you can't really push here because I'll just come back and take. So knight ce2, knight d6, getting his knight off the back rank, pretty logical. c3. So now this structure is kind of frozen, and it kind of gives him some safety for his king, but at the same time his pieces are a little like congested. This bishop doesn't have any scope, but I guess neither does mine. This queen, you know, there's not really much going on here. I can very easily defend b2 if I have to. So I was like, all right, this position's fine. He plays knight e4, and I looked, I was like, do I want to take there? Probably not, right? Because if I take, now his bishop is slowly like becoming a little more active, and I'd have to like do this, and I don't know, I didn't like that idea. So I was like, all right, let me just at least play what I wanted to a while ago, this idea of queen h5 using this diagonal, and like maybe in some worlds this will come in handy, foreshadowing. Knight f8, I didn't consider knight f8 at all, and I thought it made sense because it protects this pawn here. But I was like, all right, that should be fine. My queen can just sit here, and it's totally fine. So I played bishop b1. He takes my knight, which really surprised me because this is kind of what I wanted, in the sense that once I take back with the knight on e2, now I just have the open e file for my rook. What I think he thought was that I was going to take here because my bishop sucks so much, and his knight is probably worth more than my bishop in this position. So let's just say random move. What I think he thought was something like here, and even though he has this pawn that's passed, it's not so easy to defend because the bishop is kind of in the way of, like, it's not necessarily in the way of the rook because I pushed it here for no reason, but it's hard to defend this pawn, right? Like, yeah, the bishop's defending it, but then you would have to like move your queen to like here, your rook would have to like, or your king would have to step out of the way just to even be able to access this square here. And once I move my knight again to, I don't know, let's just say something like c1, right? Now I can like attack it this way, I have it this way, I can play queen g4 later, and I figured I would be better. I can win the pawn. So I think that's what he thought. So he took my knight. I was super happy for him to take my knight because, I wanted to open the e-file. Your bishop still sucks. It's still stuck behind this pawn. Admittedly, my bishop doesn't quite have a future yet, but there's a pawn that's a little backwards here. So, maybe in the future I get my knight to g4 here, like, I don't know, I would have to be in one of these squares. So like 1, 2, 3. I also just have queen f7. Well, queen f7, and I'd have to like, I guess I'm attacking this knight. But anyway, you get the idea, right? Like, I'm gonna eventually figure out a way to activate my bishop, and it'd probably revolve around getting rid of this pawn. But anyway, so I played knight takes g3, and then he played queen c7, and I looked at it and I'm like, that's just mate. Yeah, so it was kind of weird because queen c7 is like the one move that blunders the game, right? I'm not exactly sure what he wanted with queen c7. I mean, it's the open diagonal, so I assume that's what he was trying to like use. But funnily enough, it cuts out the only escape square that he has against the incoming queen e8, right? Because if again, let's say random move. Actually, even this is. Oh, I guess queen f7 is a problem. So let's just say like here again, right? Here, at least he can go to c7. And now my the rook's attacking my queen, and I don't know. Game like kind of continues. Your position is probably even worse, but at least you're not getting mated. So yeah, a bit of a blunder on his part. I didn't really know why he didn't castle so early, but I will take the wins as I get them because, as evidenced by the last video, I lost them 3 times in a row. So always fun. Yeah, so nice win against Wayne. Hopefully I can keep it up, but I need to study the Sicilian a little more, and especially the way I play it, just because it's like he knows I play a Grand Prix style setup, and I kind of have a vague idea on how he wants to play it. It's just a matter of battle of the wits, I guess. So moving on to the next game of the day, me and Anthony end up playing a game. I have the white pieces this time around, and we go into another Rubinstein French, or Tarrasch, but now it's the Rubinstein, I guess. And we get the main line, so knight d7, knight f3, knight f6, knight takes f6, knight takes f6. And in this position, c3 and bishop d3 are like 2 of the main moves here. Computer disagrees with me, but whatever. Right, c3, bishop d3 just make a lot of sense. Even bishop f4 or bishop g5, knight e5, a lot of moves here. But I was looking at this position in my note, like preparing for whenever I would play Anthony again, and I was like, this bishop b5 check idea is kind of interesting, right? If he blocks with the bishop, I'll trade it off, and it's like, yeah, you get rid of the French bishop, but the French bishop is not even that bad in this situation. Like, it's very easy to activate in 2 ways, and I know he's going to do something like this, like b6, bishop b7. And, my bishop might suck compared to his bishop because I'm going to put my pawn on c3, but at the same time, I don't have to put my pawn on c3. I can play like b3, c4, bishop b2, and then expand with d5. I can literally just bring my bishop out to g5 and then take his knight and justify this by putting my pawns on dark squares. So I was like, that looks fine. Knight d7 looks really weird because I can play knight e5, or not knight e5? Queen e2. All right, well, queen e2. Also, I didn't think it would make sense for him to bring his knight here and then go back, or even like if it was a normal knight here, like, didn't make sense to me. But what he played in the game is what I wanted him to play, which is c6. The reason I wanted him to play c6, and I played bishop d3 after, now if he tries to fianchetto his bishop with this, he needs to spend another move to open it up. And later in the game, you'll see what I was going to do against that. So bishop e7, castle, castle, c3. So here it is, b6. I played knight e5 because, I mean, this knight is just really strong. Bishop b7, and here my idea, which is bad, was b4. And the idea is that you can't really play c5 very easily because I'm going to take, and, you know, I guess you can take here. But yeah, that was the whole idea. I didn't want him to play c5, but I guess it doesn't really work. More than anything, I wanted him to play c6 because this would not actually activate his bishop. It would take him one extra move. But kind of following that up with b4 was not the way to go. I guess queen f3 is the way to go because now you need to play like rook b8. But anyway, b4, not the way to go. Also knight d5. Knight d5 is not a good move. All right. So he played knight d5. And I was kind of sad to play knight e5 so early because now I don't have Greek gift ideas. I mean, I never really did because this is covered enough. And in this position, I was looking at it and I was like, c4 looks like the right move, but it would blunder the b4 pawn. And I was thinking to myself, maybe there's some justification for like getting development, you know, kind of like luring his knight towards the edge of the board really far away from his king. I was like, oh, maybe there's something there. I looked at it, I'm like, nah, that just looks like I'm losing a pawn. I'm not going to do that. But the computer, being the computer, finds a crazy move here. Bishop h7. King takes h7. And what's the follow-up here? It's not queen h5. It's rook b1. It's rook b1. I was actually looking at this as I was entering it. I just happened to see... you know, I was looking at like, oh, I should have played c4, and then one of the moves it recommended... Well, the line it recommended after c4 was like this, and I was like, what? Oops, spoiler. Where did I... Okay. Yeah, so apparently I can sack my pawn, I can sack my bishop, play rook b1, and it's equal. And I'm just like, excuse me? But again, this is all just like what I noticed when I was entering the moves in. Because if I was black here, I'd play knight a6. Queen h5, king g8. Rook b3. Wait, f6. Knight g4. Queen e8. Knight h6. Because you can't take because it's mate. Yeah, there's no way I was going to see this. I played queen e2. Vague idea of just trading off the bishop. Later, not right now, because this bishop isn't doing anything. But bishop f6. And then it was kind of stupid of me to play queen e2 and then play queen h5. Like, I should have just... If I wanted to go for this idea, right, I should have just played queen h5 in one go. But yeah, He plays g6. I go back to f3. He kind of like puts his bishop into this newly available square. Bishop d2. This pawn was technically available for the taking, but I guess, I don't know if he didn't want to take it because he thought it was a trap or what, but it was free. I didn't actually have any plan if he took the pawn. Rook c8, rook e1. He breaks out with c5, so now this is a problem. The bishop is now activated. I got out of the way with queen h3, trying to line up some ideas of bishop h6. Maybe I can try to get like some weird mate going. cd4, queen e7, bishop h6. So again, I'm trying to trade this off and try to make some attack happen. But yeah, it takes the free pawn on b4. I was totally okay with giving that up. I was really just trying to force something to happen here, which maybe I shouldn't have. Well, computer obviously says I shouldn't have, but I was like, all right, maybe there's some idea here. You know, your pieces aren't quite in a position to defend an attack. Like, it's just your queen and like maybe this rook. You know, I'll have my knight in the position. My bishop is like there. I could try to rook lift, and do something there. But he smartly trades off my bishop. I tick back by playing rook d3, and my idea was like, okay, maybe I can like find a way to play knight g4, queen h6, bring my rook over here and do something. Bishop d5 makes a lot of sense. It's attacking my a2 pawn. I was fully ready to give this pawn up and try to get try to make something happen here. So I played knight g4, right? This is my idea. This was a good move. Queen g5, just stopping this idea. And there's not really a clear way to kick this queen away. Like f4 doesn't work, and it doesn't actually stop queen h6. So I was like, ooh, this is going to be a little rough. So I was looking at this position. I'm like, all right, well, how can I kick this queen and have it not protect h6? And, you know, my first thought was, oh, I know, rook e5. I played the move. I hit the clock, and I'm like, oh. Oops. Maybe he won't see. Oh. Oops. So, yeah, I got caught up in calculation and neglected that, you know, this is mate. Happens to the best of us. Happens to the best of us, you know. But yeah, so, I mean, going back, this crazy computer idea of c4, knight takes b4, bishop h7, like how is this the justification? It's zeros. All right, computer doesn't know what it's talking about. Pretend I never said anything about that line. But yeah, so like it's weird because I feel like I can get my pieces to do some attacking in this position, but it just, I guess like nothing works here, which is really depressing. But oh well. So moving on to the last game of the day that we recorded, our league games. I have black against Emmanuel yet again. At this point, Wayne had left. Anthony had to run. So it's just me and him playing. Liam also left with his dad? Someone? Older? I don't know. Yeah, so it's just me and Emmanuel, and we're kind of just like playing one more. Actually, wait, no, Anthony was still watching this game. I take that back. Regardless, he plays e4. And I was like, oh, all right. You want to play something different? I'll play into Caro-Kann again. I was thinking about playing Sicilian, honestly, just so that he wouldn't have to play the same thing against e4, against his e4. But oh well. So Caro-Kann, we get an exchange. Very normal Caro-Kann moves. He plays h3, and I'm like, I'll take that, not a problem. e6, castles, bishop e7, bishop 4, castle. I mean, these are all pretty standard moves. I mean, there's not really much to talk about in the first 12 moves here. I mean, just normal development. I traded my bishop for his knight, put my pawns on light squares. Very normal Caro-Kann stuff. But that said, I was also playing all of these moves very quickly because I've had this position. I've probably had this exact move order like a dozen times. At least like counting games online specifically. Like I've seen this so many times. So I was like, I didn't need to think. I was like, I know what I need to do, right? So the key thing to learn from this game, if anyone is watching this to learn from this game, in the exchange Caro-Kann, you can get this pawn structure like this, where you have these pawns and then the pawns touch on d4, d5, and you have this slant here like that. This is known as the Carlsbad structure. I am saying that probably incorrectly, but I am more so saying it to emphasize how it's pronounced. That's the phrase I'm looking for. The Carlsbad structure. And the ideas for black is to push these pawns with a minority attack and mess up white's pawn structures to create another weakness that you can then exploit or attack. And I'll show you what I mean as we go through the moves here. a6, b5. I'm anticipating the rook, the c file opening up, so I played rook c8. He plays bishop e2, so I can't push b4 right away because I'm going to lose this pawn. So I played queen b6. Knight f3. Now I can play b4. And this is kind of like one of the turning points of this Carlsbad structure, where depending on what white does will determine, like what's going to happen in the next phase of the game. So first of all, everything's protected, right? Don't hang the a pawn. So if he takes, first of all, I can just take back immediately with either queen or the bishop. I was probably going to take back with the bishop to poke this rook. So something like this, right? But oops. So after this exchange, for example, in rook f1, now you want to use this pawns to create another weakness on these two pawns, and also the d4 squares, or the d4 pawn is also a bit of a target. It's an isolated pawn. It's nicely blockaded by my pawns, so you just need to pile pressure on this. Black probably wants to trade a few pieces here just so that this weakness is more pronounced and harder to defend. How to do that in this exact position is not so easy, but that's the general idea. Now, if he doesn't do anything, so he doesn't clarify the tension on these pawns, for example, which is what happened in the game, let me go into the game and I'll show you. So first, before we figure out this tension, there was a fork. It wasn't actually being threatened, but I wanted to move this knight to e4 later, so I wanted to just stop this idea. So I played rook f8. He takes my knight on c6, which I thought was inaccurate because I'm going to take back with the rook, and I'm going to bring my other rook to c8. So I'm going to play rook dc8 later. And that kind of goes into the other point where after rook b1, he's anticipating the b file being open, and he's going to get a tempo on my queen. I'm like, fine, that's totally fine, right? So this is what happens in the game, and this is another thing that can happen out of the Carlsbad structure. Take on c3, b takes c3. Let me get my queen out of the way of the rook. Now we have this backwards pawn on c3 that I will continue to add pressure to. If I still had my knight, I could probably reroute my knight to a5 and then c4. I mean, his bishop might trade it off, but I'm going to stack pressure on the c file. I have moves like rook dc8, queen c7. Maybe not queen c7 because that, literally hangs the queen. And also, actually doesn't drop the a pawn quite yet. But yeah, so now the idea is to attack this backwards pawn. Rook b3, defending the pawn. Rook dc8, attacking the pawn. Queen d2, defending the pawn. But then knight e4, tempo on the queen, and attacks the pawn on c3. So I don't think queen d2 was the way to go. It was probably like either queen a. If I was playing this as white, I would play either queen a1 or queen c2. Probably queen a1 is better because you want to be able to take with the rooks twice before having to take with the queen. Just because I'm probably going to attack it with the rook, and you know. So probably not queen d2. Also because knight e4 just gets tempo on the queen and doesn't allow black to add a third defender to the pawn on c3 here. So queen b2, I mean, makes sense. Same diagonal, protecting the pawn, but you don't have enough defenders on the pawn, so I'm going to take it. So now the whole point of that minority attack, right? Now I'm just up a pawn. You still have an IQP now. Well, now you have an IQP after I've taken this backward c pawn. And now you got to play an IQP structure where, like I was talking about before, you're probably okay with trading pieces off as black, since black is playing against the IQP. As white, if you can help it, you don't really want to trade pieces, and you want to try to somehow remove the blockade and push the pawn. Obviously, that's not going to happen in this particular structure because I literally have 3 pawns connected to block this pawn. But yeah, this is just like forever a big weakness for white, and it's going to be really hard to find play around it. You're probably going to have to sacrifice it, so you can like gambit the pawn to do something. I'm not too sure how to play the Carlsbad structure from white. I just know the minority attack idea, which I guess white could have the minority attack if it's different in like maybe like a Nimzo Indian or something, but I digress. Took the pawn on c3. He plays bishop f3, which makes sense. You don't want to trade pieces against an IQP, but I just played knight b5. Again, pressuring the d4 pawn. He doesn't see that this is attacked twice, so he played a4, so I just took the pawn. And here, he just had a blind spot and took my knight for whatever reason. Well, not for whatever reason. He just totally missed that my queen was just been chilling on a7 this entire time. Just eyeing this pawn. So he lost his queen, unfortunately. He plays rook b7. I totally could have let him take it and take his bishop on f4. But I didn't even see that this bishop was hanging, if I'm going to be completely honest. I just played queen f6, defending my bishop. Which it still attacks the f4 bishop, funnily enough, but that's okay. So after bishop g3, I played a5. The idea with a5... The idea of a5 was just to later enable bishop b4, and like, I'm not really trapping the rook, but it's going to be hard for this rook to really escape. But he played bishop takes d5, and I was like, excuse me? I'm like, what? So obviously he's attacking my rook. And what I saw was like, okay, so you want to take here, rook takes here, and it's like, okay, you have 2 rooks on the 7th rank. That's fine. I still have check here, but my queen is defending the f7 pawn. So I was like, I don't think this is enough. So I did take his bishop. He takes with the b rook, which I thought was a mistake. So obviously there's an idea of playing rook e8 mate, but I didn't even play this the best way. I played king f8 to defend against back rank. It wasn't the best way to do it, but the reason I chose this was that I am actually threatening to take your rook to simplify the game, basically. So let's just say you makes a, maybe not that one. Let's just say he makes a random move. If he didn't resolve you know, like what's happening with his rooks, I was totally just going to take his rook here. And if we trade, I mean, I'm up 2 rooks for a bishop. Like, this is totally winning. Should be easy conversion. So that was the idea of king f8. But he played rook d7, attacking this pawn. I played rook c1, kind of pinning his rook to the king. You could take, but then it's check, and I'll be able to defend, and it should be fine. He gives me a check on d6. I take with the queen. I was gonna pause there for a dramatic effect, but so technically the best move is king g8, right? And you're not getting mated. There's no like connected pawn or whatever. I can always take this at some point. I don't think that sentence makes sense, but anyway, yeah. So I was like not afraid of. Sorry, I saw king g8, but I didn't want to play it just because I wanted to simplify the game and just get rid of any potential chance I would lose here, right? That's what I was thinking. Just like get rid of any potential chance of him giving me back rank mate. So I took his bishop, and I thought about this for a little bit, and I was like, okay, this should be fine, right? So I took his bishop on d6, and you kind of have to take back. Like, there's no other move here. You're not going to just like move your rook away. You can't come down here because you're pinned. I mean, you kind of just have to take my queen, right? Like, there's no other move. So he does. And after he takes my queen, I'm like, okay, well, now I have check here. And now I'm just up a full rook. There's no back rank mates anymore. Well, one, because my rook is still on c8. But also I can just go to e7. So I started with rook d1. He plays rook a6. I played rook c5. I almost thought I hung back rank mate, but I'm like, no. I have e7. That's the whole point of playing king f8. So he plays rook a7. I play g6 to be like, all right, now I really don't have to worry about back ranks because I can always go to g7. And I mean, from here, it's just a slow conversion to win this game. I'm threatening to make another queen. I take his pawn on a4, and you'll see here, check, push the pawn, check, push the pawn, check, push the pawn. And yeah, now it's just like a funny version of a ladder mate. And yeah, so that was the game, the last game of the day. I felt like this was a great example of the Carlsbad structure, where you're using a minority attack to create weaknesses on white's queenside majority and then attack those weaknesses. So again, let's go over the main point. b4 trying to create a weakness, but he doesn't relieve the tension, and after it's exchange, I decide to take to give him a weakness on the c file, or on c3, and now we play around the c3 pawn and try to attack it. He follows up incorrectly because I have knight e4 to, more importantly than anything, put pressure on the c pawn, but it also hits the queen in this position. If he played queen a1, then there's this, and after something like this, I can try to play what was I gonna play? Maybe like h6 b5, or I could try to trade this bishop off and then just go back. So like, let's just say something like this, and still put pressure on the c pawn. Obviously not in this exact position because you can take and whatever, but that's the idea. And then I win the pawn. Now it's an IQP instead of a Carlsbad structure. We have an IQP, isolated queen pawn. So now we got to play around the queen pawn, but he doesn't see it. So now it take, and I mean, he blundered a queen. And now it's just game over. But you can see how like this game is just like a textbook example of how to play the structure. So those are the games for the day. Hope you learned something from that last game. I am intending to go play a slow rapid 25 delay 5 game on December 8th at this one place called Chess. What is it called? Chess something? I don't know. Chess something. Chess something. So let's see how that goes. I do need to start preparing for it somehow. I just don't know how. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with today's games. Minus the fact that I blundered back rank mate against Anthony, but you know, if other people are gonna blunder mate in ones against me, then I can totally blunder mate in ones against them. So it's all right. It's been an hour, so I'm gonna stop it right at an hour.